Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, covering Harry Potter, the Rereading, Prisoner of Azkaban, chapters 14 and 15, Snape's Grudge, and the Quidditch Final. In these chapters, Hagrid loses his appeal, and Buckbeak is going to be executed. No, he's not. We know the truth. Welcome to Unspoiled. All right, welcome to the show, everyone. I'm Natasha.
I'm RoShawn.
And, yeah, these chapters I had, completely, as Harry and Ron did, forgotten all about Hagrid's problem.
Yes, I did, too, because we are all terrible friends.
Yep.
Yeah. I had kind of thought that we had already done this.
Right? And, you know what I realized? Because I get a lot of shit for having very little patience with Hagrid, which part of it I deserve, and another part of it...
Do you get a lot of shit for that?
I shouldn't say a lot of shit, but I know there are people who find it off-putting.
Right.
How irritated I get. But I'm not reasonable a lot of the time when it comes to, my expectations of people, so what can I say? But what I've come to realize is that it's not, I have a problem with Hagrid, definitely, with him just not thinking things through or being a responsible fucking adult, sure.
Yeah.
But part of, I think, why I don't love Hagrid the way a lot of people do is because his storylines always feel like an inconvenience that's interrupting the part of the books that I actually give a shit about.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, which isn't Hagrid's fault.
It's not his fault. It's just this and the friggin' Norbert, the Norwegian Ridgeback in the first book. I forgot all about that because I just don't like that storyline, and I found it super unreasonable that he expects these kids to do this.
And then the baby giant later.
Yeah, which
is kind of the same thing. And once again, he's expecting these kids to help him solve the problems of his dragon and the problems of his hippogriff and then the problems of his baby giant.
Yeah, and it just feels like I understand that it's supposed to just be kind of giving us a better look at who Hagrid is and sort of developing his character for us. But what it feels like is, here's this side quest that doesn't have to do with anything and probably won't have to do with anything. That's the one kind of caveat that I can make for this one as compared to the giant baby or Norbert is that at least the hippogriff winds up playing a huge role in the big finale.
Right.
But other than that, it can feel like it's not related to anything. And so it's no wonder I forgot it. And I'm super invested in other storylines, and I have to deal with this in the middle of it.
My feelings about Hagrid are, we talked, I think, a lot in the original read, because I also have a lack of patience when it comes to adults that I think should do and know better. But that's just, a lot of that's just my own shit. But my feeling about the character is that it's almost as if Rowling, she wanted to insert, heart into the story. I feel like Hagrid is supposed to be kind of like the heart,
Okay.
And it's simultaneously what I love about him and also what makes me kind of but did we really need it, though?
Right.
And also Hagrid is the only adult that we meet that really spends a lot of time with the kids and knows a lot of what they're up to.
Right.
A lot of times he knows what they're up to because he ends up giving them information he's not supposed to. So he's there when they, when the idea or the plan formulates, But yeah, he's the adult that spends the most time with these three throughout the books.
Right.
So he's like this weird surrogate for grown-ups, you know?
Yeah, I guess that is like, it feels like she's trying to bridge that gap where it's like, well, I can't just have the kids going and discussing adult shit with adults and then the adults be telling the kids everything they ask, because that's just not how that shit works. So I guess I'm going to need an adult who's sort of inept and accidentally lets a bunch of shit slip.
Right.
So I guess that makes sense. And I just wish that more of the crises that he runs into had to do with letting shit slip that was related to the main plot. And instead it always is like a whole separate other thing.
Right. You know what else I just thought about is it's weird too, because we're told that we don't really get any, we don't see it in action, but we're told all the time how highly Dumbledore thinks of Harry, because, you know, he believes that Harry can complete this long, you know, this mission,
right,
that Harry can win. So even though we don't see Dumbledore in action trusting Harry hardly ever, we're told that, you know, Dumbledore believes in Harry. We just kind of have to take him at his word. The same with, like, McGonagall. Hagrid is the only adult that actually sees how capable they are, because they have to keep kind of saving his ass.
Yeah, I guess that's true. It's a real inside look.
So, but anyway, so Hagrid's got a problem. Imagine that. Surprise!
Surprise! I kind of love, too, if you look at the illustration for the beginning of chapter 14, it's Hagrid's hairy suit, with, like, this really ugly lining, and there's a red and yellow tie with it that's obviously got legs on it, like the stripe, to make it look like it's this giant centipede.
Oh, right.
Oh, it's so awful.
Oh, yeah, it's got a little head, too.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
At the bottom, yeah.
I didn't even see that further down.
Why does he have a hairy suit?
Well, that's like he's just got really bad, weird, old-fashioned style. So I think it's like a horsehair suit or something. I'm trying to think what kind of tailor stocks enough fabric to fucking clothe Hagrid.
Maybe that's why it's a hairy suit.
Maybe.
Limited options. And his little buttons.
Yeah, I want to know what those are about.
Those are all his secret clubs that he's in that we don't know about, so we get the Hagrid standalone book.
Oh my god. You know people would go nuts for that.
Oh, yeah.
So, this chapter starts off with everybody flipping out in Gryffindor Tower waiting for the teachers to come back and be like, we caught Sirius Black, which of course they do not get to report.
Yeah, that does not happen.
And then we have like the paranoia of everybody putting extra security in place. Right.
Neville's not even given the password anymore.
Poor Neville.
He just has to wait outside for other people to come in and out.
Yep.
And he gets a howler.
Yes, he does.
Which is unpleasant.
I love the whole idea of a howler. It's just such a great concept. I'm trying to think of what like the equivalent of that is, and really the only equivalent is your parent actually showing up and screaming at you in like the lobby of your school while they drag you home, you know?
Yeah. Either that or, as was my case, outside.
There you go.
Like if you're playing outside and you have to be home by, like, say, when the street lights come on, and then you don't, and then your mom has to come outside and, like, scream your name, which may have happened to me once or twice or 30 times. And my mom was not, like, a go look for you kid. She was like, I'm just going to stand on the porch and scream your name for until you come home.
Yeah, that seems like it would be effective. Nobody wants that.
Sometimes you would get really lucky and it wouldn't just be you, because everyone had the same rule. Like, everybody had to be home when the streetlights came on. So if you were still out, the odds are your friends were still out with you. So it would just be a series of moms coming out from various doors to yell into the night for their children.
It's so weird to me too, like thinking about the streetlights rule because of how fucking early it's been getting dark here. It's been worse than usual because it's also been super cloudy, but not rainy. It's just cloudy for the past like week and a half. So it's starting to feel like the sun has set around 3:30. And the streetlights are going to come on before you even, like, get home from school at that point. So, yeah, that's what's going on with Neville. He's in disgrace. She also bans him from going back to Hogsmeade. McGonagall does.
Oh, God, he gets detention. No more Hogsmeade.
Yep.
No password and Howler. It's a bad scene for our friend Neville.
Yeah, it is. And Ron, meanwhile, is enjoying a moment in the spotlight for once.
Mm-hmm.
Because of him being the one that apparently Sirius was, like, mistakenly at his bed instead of Harry's, which we now know. He was looking for fucking Scabbers. Yeah,
he was exactly where he fucking wanted to be.
Yep.
I love Ron, retelling the story, and it gets more dramatic every time, and every detail is mentioned. Good for him.
Right.
I mean, if you can't milk something like this, then what is even the point?
Listen, as somebody who loves attention, being friends with someone super famous that would get all of it and I would not even be noticed would kill me. I'd hate it so much. So I really feel for Ron in that he's not only best friends with Harry, but he's also got a bunch of brothers, and two of them are super hilarious, popular twins.
Right.
There's just no room for you, Ron. I'm sorry, buddy. I feel for you on that a lot.
That's so great, too, that, of course, Ron, like, who else could stand to be friends with Harry throughout these books, except someone who is just used to being in the shadows, Yeah. Anyone else, and I know Hermione, obviously I'm excluding her because, she's not petty like this. But I feel like any other character after a while would get, would be so over it that they wouldn't even be friends with Harry by like the third year.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of drama to deal with, man. Ron also, him and Harry, still are aware that the teachers didn't search that one entrance from the Honeydukes cellar. And Harry's like, do you think I should tell them? And Ron's like, he's not coming. There's been no break-in at Honeydukes. If he were coming in that way, he'd have to break in the middle of the night. So I don't think you need to worry about it because that's clearly not what he's doing.
And Harry is like, I'm really happy you think that way because I don't want to tell anybody about that passageway.
There is nothing better than you kind of having mixed feelings on something and the person that you're buds with completely validates that, which RoShawn did for me earlier today about a thing and made me just feel so much better about it. I won't go into that. So they are, they get a note from Hagrid that he's going to come and pick them up because they aren't supposed to walk by themselves on the grounds. And Ron assumes it's because Hagrid wants all the dirty details. And in fact, Hagrid does not give a shit.
Not at all. And Ron is taken aback a little bit.
He's a little more disappointed by that than I think he is even happy to acknowledge. And they get back to his place, and it turns out that he wants to talk to them about Hermione, who has been not only doing this crazy workload, but is still helping Hagrid despite all the work she's doing. And this, basically what it comes down to is Hagrid being like, give her a fucking break. You guys are being assholes. I thought you were better than this. And then being really embarrassed about it. But not embarrassed enough, because later Ron just, totally shit-cans her again with her threatening to tell McGonagall about the map.
Right. Because, even though I am much more inclined to be sympathetic and supportive of Ron, he still can kind of be the worst.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like so... I understand where she's coming from, and this is where I start to, look at myself, because I'm like, in principle, I agree with her, but I don't think I would do it. You know what I mean? So I feel like, what does that say about me? That I'd be like, no, I'm gonna let this, potential secret entrance for a murderer, totally go, because I don't want to be a dick to my friends.
Is that why you wouldn't tell? Because you don't want to be a dick?
I think so, yeah.
I'm trying to think what I would be. I probably, knowing me, would like the idea of a secret passageway. Because, you know, I always like to know where I can run to.
Okay.
You know, like
this went in a direction I didn't expect.
If I need a way to get out, you know, an escape plan, if you will.
So you wouldn't tell because you want that shit for yourself, is what
Probably.
you're saying.
I think that's what I'm saying.
So you're kind of in the Harry boat.
A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I would have a hard time letting the one way I know to get to where I want to be closed down. Even if shutting it down is the thing that makes the most fucking sense. You know, it's the responsible thing to do. And I think I would kind of be like Harry, like, well, you know,
right.
Let's look at both sides of the secret tunnel.
Oh, there were mistakes made on both sides here, guys. And I wanted to bring up Austin Armenia, who's a patron, commented on the last episode about Ron, and he said, in defense of Ron, let's change up the animals here. How would you react if your pet cat was killed by your friend's dog after they'd repeatedly tried to kill it and they ignored you? One of Ron's biggest problems is that a lot of times he's not necessarily wrong, he just has no idea of tact or nuance. Okay, so I get what you're saying, and I don't disagree with the principle of what you're saying, although, you know, I have never had a rat for a pet. And I have a hard time with the notion that you get the same kind of connection with a rat that you would with a cat. But I am sure there are people with rat pets out there who are like screaming at me right now and going, you don't know. And I don't. And you are correct. But the part that I get irritated by is like most people, when they have a pet rat, they have a cage for it or they have a tank for it. And Ron knows that there's a cat roaming around. That has tried to go after, and that pet rat is not coming with him to class. So if he's so worried about it, get a fucking cage. Problem fucking solved. But instead, he just yells at Hermione that she's supposed to what? Just get rid of her cat entirely? That's not fair either.
Well, I guess someone could say she should keep her cat upstairs in her room with the door shut.
That's not how it apparently cats work around Hogwarts, because we see Mrs. Norris running around, which she's Filch's cat, so maybe it's a different rule. Yeah,
I mean, we don't see anybody else's pets running around.
We don't see other people's rats either. Like, just in as far as we know, because they say one owl, one cat, or one toad,
right? And
somehow Ron's able to bring Scabbers with him.
So here's what's happening with Scabbers, in my opinion. In the book and as readers. One, it's a rat. And people feel about animals in a kind of pretty specific
hierarchy,
right? So a rat is not as valuable as a pet, as a cat. And then, you know, people, like, I feel like if Scabbers was going after Trevor, it would be the same kind of thing. Oh, it's just a toad.
Which, for the record, I acknowledge that it's somewhat arbitrary where we decide to draw these lines.
Right. And then also Scabbers is really old and he just isn't valued. Right. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. Actually, it's kind of wrong now that I'm saying it out loud. But it's not valued to the other kids at Hogwarts, to Harry or to Hermione. As a reader, I didn't give a fuck about that rat. Because, you know, it's a rat. And it's totally not fair, but I think Austin is right. Because if it had been reversed, or if it had been flipped, and it was a larger, more dangerous animal going after Crookshanks, you know, I would probably feel some kind of way about it. And then Ron, now that I'm talking about it, I think, not that Ron doesn't love Scabbers in that weird way because he's his family's rat or whatever, But he's so mad because it's very clear that no one cares because it's just old, beat up, disgusting rat scabbers, and he's not important. He's got no value, so nobody cares that he's being attacked.
Yeah, that's
so.
true.
Yeah, I think Ron is kind of right to be pissed off.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm coming from. Is like I'm not siding with Hermione entirely here. Like I think Ron has a right. I mean, he lost his pet, and whether or not I understand having that kind of connection to a rat is irrelevant. He did, and he feels like she doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't. And she doesn't. She's got bigger fish to fry right now, which, to be fair, he does not know about any of that.
Yeah.
But also, like I said, if he cared so much, get a fucking cage. So, there's a little bit of personal responsibility there, buddy. And, if she'd just get rid of the cat, I'd speak to her again, but she's still sticking up for it, which I'm just like, you're asking her to just get rid of her cat completely, which isn't fair either. What if she was like, well, he wouldn't chase Scabbers if Scabbers wasn't here, so just send Scabbers home? Why does she have to give up her pet when it's just acting the way that a cat acts?
By the time we get to this point where Ron is like, if, you would just give up the cat, I think really at the beginning when this first happened, because Crookshanks goes after Scabbers on the train to school. Mm-hmm. So it's even before she's got like her caseload and, Time Turner and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think if she had shown what Ron considered real concern, then he wouldn't be in the mind of, oh, well, you should just get rid of your cat. If you were really my friend, you would get rid of your cat.
Right.
But because she, didn't give a fuck from the door, now he's all the way on the other side where you can't be my friend unless you get rid of your fucking cat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I'm saying is there are mistakes made on both sides. I'm just going to keep coming back to that. So, yeah, then they go back, and like I said, Hagrid just said, I thought you valued your friends more than rats and broomsticks, that's all. And they seem ashamed of themselves, but as soon as they go back, Harry and Ron are talking about Harry meeting Ron at Hogsmeade, and then Hermione is just like, I'm going to tell if you don't. And Ron says, oh, so now you're trying to get Harry expelled. Haven't you done enough damage this year? And just as Hermione's about to say something, Crookshanks leaps into her lap, hissing, which is probably the worst timing ever. And she just gets up and leaves with Crookshanks. And, as we see later, does not follow through on that threat, which I thought she might do when I first read this. Like, I was kind of thinking, she doesn't usually make idle threats. If she said she's going to do it, she's gonna. But apparently what Ron said really, like, struck home for her.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. Because we know for a fact that she doesn't have second thoughts about going to McGonagall if she thinks something is really a problem. Mm-hmm. If she thinks she's doing the right thing, she'll definitely go and tell. Mm-hmm. But I think what he said really did hurt her feelings, and she's already feeling so bad, and now, with all the Time Turner stuff going on, she's so tired and just overwhelmed.
Yeah.
That it's almost like her not telling is actually out of character. And
Yeah, I could agree with you on that. It's almost like she just can't add this to her plate. Mm-hmm. She's like, fine, fucking do this then. If you get caught, on your head be it, as they say.
Yeah. And also, I think part of it, and I don't know, maybe I'm really going across the line, but I think she just doesn't want them to be even more mad at her.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think she feels like, well, I've closed the door on our friendship for right now, but I haven't locked it yet. And if I do that, that's locking it and knocking the door handle off. Like, So then the next scene is Harry packing his invisibility cloak so that he can go meet him in Hogsmeade, and he runs into Neville, who also isn't going in, and Neville's trying to be a buddy, not going to Hogsmeade buddy, And they're in the middle of this, like, awkward interaction where Harry's coming up with excuses and then, like, backtracking on the excuse when he realizes it's not going to work. And poor Neville's too sweet and pure to realize that's what's happening when anybody else would totally see in a second that he's kind of going back and forth a lot on what he's saying he's doing here. And then Snape shows up.
It's like one of the few times Harry must have been like, thank God.
Right?
Thank God it's Snape.
And Snape seemed like, it must be the occlumency thing to a degree that, like, he's just better at reading people, but he somehow knows that there's a reason they are specifically here, which they could have just run into each other, like, for any reason where they are. But he very specifically, like, wants to know why they're here. And then when he tells them to leave, Harry sees Snape looking at the witch statue and examining it. Like, he is aware there has to be something. Yeah,
there's a reason why he was here.
Yeah.
And if he could just look closely enough, he can find it.
Which kind of, and, you know, this is a silly thing to kind of get hung up on, but if you look on 209 is the scene, and when Harry is, like, caught by Neville, he just said Descendium and pushes his bag into the statue. But then Neville shows up, and it doesn't say that the statue closes again. I don't know how that works, but I really felt like Harry was just standing there with this, like, kind of open stat. And so when Snape goes to inspect it, I felt like Snape should have seen.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean? And he doesn't, so I guess it just closes on its own if you don't, like, get in there fast enough, but that feels really dangerous. Just like some marble statue that just snaps shut when you're halfway. Like, they just find your torso bloody in the hallway one morning. So, yeah, I just wish that they had mentioned Harry just, like, kind of tapping it again and shutting it before Neville comes and walks up to him. And so then Harry manages to shake Neville and go back. And Ron has been standing around forever wondering where the fuck Harry is. And they go to the Owl Emporium so that Harry can see that. And then they go to Zonko's so that Ron can take Harry's order and buy him stuff. But Harry has to be super careful because there's lots of people in there. And then they go to the Shrieking Shack, which, you know, we at this point only know of as being, like, the most haunted dwelling in Britain, and that even the Hogwarts ghosts say a very rough crowd lives there.
Right. I like that description, too.
Yes.
Like it's a bad part of town.
Yeah, so I like the idea of, like, ghost gentrification. Is there, like, a spot where, like, the really high-end ghosts have just taken over and now everything is just...
now there are coffee shops and yogurt places.
Right, exactly. Just like a mayonnaise store. Did you see that in Brooklyn? There's literally a store that only sells different types of mayonnaise.
No, I did not see that.
I mean, it is the most literal, like, white people are here now.
God.
I mean...
fuck.
So... they are chilling there talking about the Shrieking Shack looking creepy when Malfoy comes up over the ridge, bragging about his not injured arm and how that hippogriff is as good as dead and Hagrid's a fucking moron. And he says something to Ron about how I bet you wish you lived here since your house is such trash. And Ron's about to, like, kind of go after him, and Harry holds him back and is like, please, allow me. And chucks mud at Malfoy and pokes Goyle with a stick. Or it's Crabbe. And he's doing alright. He's fucking him up a little bit. But then all of a sudden, Crabbe steps on the edge of Harry's cloak and pulls it off his face. And Harry's disembodied head is just chilling in midair.
That's actually better than the mud and the poke with the stick.
Well, a little bit spookier, right? If only he'd had like a real creepy mask on.
Oh my god.
And then that appeared hovering in midair, that would be...
Yeah. That's something. Harry should be wearing a mask whenever he goes out with the cloak, just in case something like this happens.
Yeah, I really like that idea. So, as soon as Malfoy sees Harry, he takes off, and Ron is like, you need to go. And Harry sprints back and is trying to beat Malfoy there, even though he kind of thinks that's not going to happen. And it doesn't happen, because he barely manages to get out of the witch statue when Snape shows up and is like, oh, well, well, well. And, you know, Harry's hands are covered in mud from chucking mud at Malfoy, and he's breathing hard and sweaty.
Yeah.
It's pretty
Clearly,
clear.
Something is up.
Yes. Although he wisely left the invisibility cloak behind so that it wouldn't be on his person.
Right.
If he were to get caught.
Which is pretty good thinking for a kid, you know? Usually, when you're that young, you don't think ahead that way.
It's true.
But that's good.
So, yeah, can you imagine what Malfoy saw? It was your head floating in midair. There was a long silence.
Maybe he should see someone.
It sounds like Malfoy is having Malfoy is not having hallucinations, snarled Snape. And he bent down, a hand on each arm of Harry's chair so that their faces were a foot apart. If your head was in Hogsmeade, so was the rest of you. I've been up in Gryffindor Tower, said Harry, like you told me. Can anyone confirm that? Harry didn't say anything. Snape's thin mouth curled into a horrible smile. So, everyone, from the Minister for Magic downwards, has been trying to keep famous Harry Potter safe from Sirius Black, but famous Harry Potter is a law unto himself. Let the ordinary people worry about his safety. Famous Harry Potter goes where he wants to, with no thoughts for the consequences.
Good gracious.
Right?
Now, he is not wrong.
No, he is not wrong.
But dial it back.
But this is also a child, dude. How extraordinarily like your father you are, Potter, Snape said suddenly, his eyes glinting. He, too, was exceedingly arrogant. Which, I don't know if you've seen this, but somebody put forth on Tumblr or somewhere the concept of an Alan Rickman narrated GPS system. Where
no, I haven't.
You're driving and all of a sudden, how extraordinarily like your father you are. He too would have missed that exit. Take the next exit and turn around. Just like really judging you. So, Snape continues in this vein, just trying to provoke Harry, and Harry knows Snape is trying to provoke him, but it works anyway.
Yeah, my dad didn't strut, which is a funny word to, stick in your craw like that. But it does the job. And
it's kind of funny knowing what we know now, that James most definitely did strut.
Oh, he was a strutter.
He sure was. But
again, this is Snape talking to a little kid in a completely inappropriate, childish, petty, cruel way.
Yes.
And this is why he is not a hero.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah.
And then Harry tries to throw it in Snape's face, how Dumbledore told him that his father saved Snape's life. And Snape is like, hey, did he not tell you how that happened? And Harry realizes very quickly, oh, he didn't. Oh, no. Like, he just kind of shuts right up when he's presented with that question. And then he says, have you been imagining some act of glorious heroism? Let me correct you. Your saintly father and his friends played a highly amusing joke on me that would have resulted in my death if your father hadn't got cold feet at the last moment. There was nothing brave about what he did. He was saving his own skin as much as mine. Had their joke succeeded, he would have been expelled from Hogwarts. Well, shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then he tells Harry to turn out his pockets. And thankfully, Harry had wiped the map before he put it away. And he manages to trick Snape into being... Well, he's like, oh, it's just some old parchment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's got a pocket full of candy.
Yep.
He's like, well, Ron gave them to me.
Yep. Yeah, he gave them to me last time. Oh, and you've been just carrying them around ever since. How very touching. So, Snape tries to get the map to reveal its secrets to him. This doesn't go great. Professor Severus Snape, master of this school, which, no, he's not.
Now, in the movie, they do this scene differently, right?
I do not remember how this goes.
I know they're in the court. I feel like in the movie, wasn't Harry like sneaking out late at night as opposed to coming back from Hogsmeade? I can't remember.
I don't remember either. Because the third movie is such a goddamn mess. I'm pretty sure that they had the thing in Hogsmeade. Because they do have Harry hearing about Sirius and his father at the Three Broomsticks from McGonagall and the Minister of Magic. So I think they stuck with that, but I don't remember how this specific part goes down. But yeah, so he calls himself master of this school, even though he's not, you liar. Commands you to yield the information you conceal. As though an invisible hand was writing upon it, words appeared on the smooth surface of the map. Mr. Mooney presents his compliments to Professor Snape and begs him to keep his abnormally large nose out of other people's business. Mr. Prongs agrees with Mr. Mooney and would like to add that Professor Snape is an ugly git. Mr. Padfoot would like to register his astonishment that an idiot like that ever became a professor. Mr. Wormtail bids Professor Snape good day and advises him to wash his hair, the slime ball. Well, shit. And then he summons Lupin in a thing that I don't feel like we ever see again. Do you remember this happening ever again? He takes some powder, which I'm assuming is flu powder, throws it into the fire, and then yells, Lupin, I want a word.
Yeah, no, I don't recall ever seeing this again. I mean, we see Sirius pop up in fire to talk, but I don't think we ever see anybody else calling someone in the fire.
Yeah, so this is, and yeah, Lupin isn't just chilling in the fire the way that Sirius did. He comes all the way through, like one would with regular. So it's almost like you can use flu powder on your side to open up the thing, yell for somebody, and your powder has opened the way, so they just need to step in. They don't even need to use powder on their end. So Snape points out the parchment, and since Lupin is Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, he suggests that maybe Lupin can illuminate the situation. Harry sees immediately that something is up, though, because when Lupin looks at the map, he gets this sort of weird expression on his face. And he recovers pretty quickly, but Harry saw it. And then Lupin kind of puts Snape off. Like, Snape's like, it's clearly full of dark magic, and Lupin's like, this seems like it's from Zonko's. It's a joke product, right?
Right.
And Snape says, you think a joke shop could supply him with such a thing? You don't think it more likely that he got it directly from the manufacturers? Which, what do you think he meant by that? Because when I first read this, I thought, or well, not when I first read it, but when I first reread, I thought that Snape was accusing Lupin of having given it to Harry. But when I reread it, it doesn't feel like that's what he's saying, or else Lupin would directly refute that accusation.
Right. Instead, what Lupin does is just ask Harry if that's true. Mm-hmm. I just assumed he meant basically what it says in the book, which is that whoever these code names are either people Harry knows that made this map for him, or that he's one of those people.
It's such a weird thing. Like, having it be in italics like that, it just feels like there was something really specific that he was suggesting. Right.
It does feel like that. And the code names, the Mooney and Wormtail and all that, after having finished the whole book, I'm surprised that Snape doesn't know about Wormtail.
Yeah. Because
Voldemort calls him that. Doesn't he call him that?
He does, but with the timelines, I'm not
sure if, like, I don't think that we ever see Voldemort call him that in front of Snape. I'm not saying that, but it just seems like that's what Voldemort calls him, and it makes me think that at some point, like at some point, Snape would have heard that and would have been familiar with that. You know what I mean? Would be familiar with that nickname.
I don't think, because we've been over this before, the fact that a lot of Death Eaters don't know each other, and people who assist Death Eaters don't know each other. So I don't see any reason why Voldemort would be, talking about Wormtail in front of Snape. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
Because, the fact that he goes after Lily and James in the first place comes as a shock to Snape. Once he finds out that, oh yeah, I went over there and killed them. BT dubs.
Yeah.
It's not like he's part of that plan. Do you know what I mean?
Well, no. Well, see, that's the thing, though. Snape knows that Voldemort is looking for them, but he doesn't know about who the secret keeper is. But Snape does get to the house right when it's happening, or right after it happened.
Right. After it happened, yeah.
Which I don't know if that's interesting or not. How did he get there so fast? Or if that's if that's just in the movie. Maybe that's just in the movie.
Yeah, I think that he hears about it, but I don't think that he goes there and sees it all himself the way that he does in the movie.
And then we know that late in Goblet of Fire, even though Snape's not there, we talked about this too, how the Death Eaters are all there, but they all have masks on. Mm-hmm. But Wormtail is there, and he doesn't have a mask on, and Voldemort calls him Wormtail in front of everybody who is there. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just, I wonder about that. That after 10 years as a double agent, that he hasn't heard. I don't know. I thought maybe this was supposed to be telling us that Snape knew somehow, or at least suspected who made this map, but it doesn't really ever come back up, so I don't know.
Yeah, I'm interested, listeners, if you have any theories on what exactly he was trying to say here. Let me, because I just find it to be she rarely puts things in italics like that. So the fact that she did it, and the fact that he's talking to Lupin, it just feels like there's something that I'm missing here. But anyway. And
those nicknames were absolutely secret, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, does he think that it's another thing from Voldemort? That it's the journal had been? That maybe Harry got duped into taking another magical object that had
Maybe. Which would tie in with his whole, you're the, defense against the dark arts,
Yeah.
And
that is what it is. Full of dark magic. 'Cause the last thing that wrote back when you wrote on it was, just had a little piece of Voldemort's soul in it, no big deal. So maybe that's what he's saying. Anyway, so Lupin's in the middle of being I don't think so, and Ron comes flinging through the door, and is oh, no, I got Harry that stuff up, everything's fine. And Lupin immediately is like, well, see, we're good here. I'm going to take this if you don't mind. Bye! So subtle. And they bail out of there. And Lupin, like, Harry tries... I think Harry is intending to turn to Lupin and be like, hey, I really want that back. But he doesn't realize that Lupin knows exactly what the fuck that is. Mm-hmm. And you ain't getting that shit back. And you can just kiss it goodbye. And he says, I am, however, astounded you didn't hand it in, particularly after what happened the last time a student left information about the castle lying around. And he says, why did Snape think I'd got it from the manufacturers? Because, Lupin hesitated, because these map makers would have wanted to lure you out of the school. They'd think it extremely entertaining. Do you know them? Said Harry, impressed. We've met, he said shortly. He was looking at Harry more seriously than ever before. So see, you're right. It does seem to suggest that somehow Snape thinks that, like, Snape knows. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe that is, but it doesn't feel like he's accusing Lupin in that moment either.
Yeah, maybe what it is that those nicknames were behind things that happened at Hogwarts when they were all at school together, James and Lupin and Snape. So Snape doesn't know it's Lupin, but remembers those names being behind things. But, I mean, that's a huge leap. You know, we don't have anything to really base that on. Mm-hmm. But he's clearly saying that Snape expects those names to be behind something like luring Harry out of school. So, yeah, maybe they would do things and it'd be signed, you know.
Yeah.
Brought to you by...
Oh, God. So, Lupin takes the map and just basically is like, you know, think about what you fucking did. Your parents gave their lives to keep you alive. A poor way to repay them, gambling their sacrifice for a bag of magic tricks. And then when he and Ron head back to Gryffindor Tower, Hermione's standing there, and they think that she's there just to be like, I fucking told you. But instead, she's there to be like, Buckbeak is going to be executed. Here's a sad note from Hagrid with tear stains on it. And this basically is a dire enough situation that Ron is prepared to just shelve his whole argument with Hermione and just tells her, listen, you aren't going to have to figure this out alone. We are going to do this together this time.
And she is so relieved that she just, you know, starts crying and sobbing and is so grateful and happy to be back, you know, that they're going to help her do this. Because she's been plugging along on this whole time while these two have been out having, you know, wacky adventures with maps and secret passageways and invisibility clues.
Wacky adventures.
And then she really says she's sorry about Scabbers, which, you know, you feel like Ron's been waiting for. And as soon as she does it, he's just kind of like, yeah, it's okay.
He was old. You never know. Mom and Dad might get me an owl now. So yeah, then when they see Hagrid too, it's so sad because he says that it's his own fault because he was just so bad at presenting all the facts that Hermione had looked up for him, dropping his notes and everything. But you know that, like, Lucius just had that shit in the bag. No matter how good Hagrid was at presenting it, it wouldn't matter. Because the game is rigged. Listen, guys.
It really is, though.
I just pounded on the desk and my GarageBand file just went, nope, I don't like it. And there's this, like, huge down spike in background noise. My bad. So Malfoy, meanwhile, is cackling at poor Hagrid as he starts crying about losing his pet. And Hermione fucking snaps and goes and slaps him across the face with all the strength she's got. And, like, literally, Malfoy staggers to the side from the force of the slap, which is just great.
Yeah. I think in the movie they have her punch him, right?
Yes.
Which is also satisfying.
Yes, very much so. And like Ron's trying to hold her back and she tells him to get off her and then pulls her wand out, which is just so great. And finally Malfoy's like, come on. And they get out of there. But like, I really wonder what she was gonna do. Like, what was in her mind right then, you know? But yeah.
I like to think she was going to remove his kneecaps.
Ooh. That'd be so gross. That'd be a fucked up thing to do, though, if you could just, like, remove people's bones. So then their, like, parts of their body just started to collapse. How fucked up would that be?
That happens to Harry's arm, right?
But it's an act, like, I felt like it was, like, a side effect of a boggled spell. Mm-hmm. I would love to see that used as, like, a weapon. Where you like, I'm just going to take your ribs out so that your whole torso, like, collapses. Or your spine. You know? Something like where just something that holds things up. You could take somebody's thigh bones. And then they just, like, fold in half and collapse on the ground. Oh, I think I might have to save that idea for bad guy in my books. Or maybe not a bad guy. Maybe a really good guy who's just kind of messed up. So Hermione then says, Harry, you better beat them in the Quidditch final because I can't stand it if Slytherin wins. And they start to head towards Charms class and they turn around and Hermione is gone. And they're just like, well, wait, what the fuck? She was right here. What just happened? And she never turns up. Which is a shame because they practiced cheering charms that day. And she could have used it.
Yeah. I feel like that is just, that's how it works.
Mm-hmm. That is true, isn't it? I don't have time for this relaxing thing that will calm me down. And she isn't at lunch either, and they start to get worried that, like, maybe Malfoy caught up with her somehow, and then they find her in the Gryffindor common room, asleep, and they have to wake her up and be like, girl, where were you? And she's like, wait, how did I forget to go? And they're like, yeah, how did you forget to go? You were with us. This doesn't make any sense, but she won't tell them. And is panicking about the fact that she missed cheering charms, which is exactly what she needs on top of everything, is to have missed a class that it looks like is going to come up on the final exam.
Yeah.
And then they go to divination, which is one of my favorite moments. I just love Hermione just being like, you know what? Nah. Oh, for goodness sake, said Hermione loudly. Not that ridiculous Grim again. Professor Trelawney raised her enormous eyes to Hermione's face. Parvati whispered something to Lavender, and they both glared at Hermione. Professor Trelawney stood up, surveying Hermione with unmistakable anger. I'm sorry to say that from the moment you had arrived in this class, my dear, it has been apparent that you do not have what the noble art of divination requires. Indeed, I don't remember ever meeting a student whose mind was so hopelessly mundane. It's
so
written
harsh.
with a capital M. Damn.
Yeah, that's harsh. Hermione doesn't even give a fuck, though.
Nope.
Fine.
I'm leaving. It's not like she needs to keep this class to graduate. Fuck it. And she just gets her bag and her books and takes off. Except that this feeds into Professor Trelawney's mystique because Professor Trelawney said, around Easter, one of our number will leave us forever. Which I just wonder, is there always just somebody who just quits, though?
Yeah, I feel like her average is that by midway through the term, at least one student is like, fuck this noise.
I think that's fair, right? I really like that theory, too. Just like, yep, who's going to be the one who pussies out this time? Is probably how she sees it. They can't handle seeing.
It's that same fucking thing, when you show it. You see it, I don't know if it happens in real life, but it happens in television shows all the fucking time. That when you're in a class and the teacher says, look to your right, look to your left, one of you won't be here at the end of the term because this is going to be so intense and people aren't going to be able to handle my truth telling. And so that's all she's doing.
Yeah, I think you're right. I like it. All right.
But I love that people do that and teachers do that because Lavender is the one who's just like remembers that she said that, you know. So there's always going to be some kid in the class that's like, oh my goodness.
So they have winter break coming up, or no, Easter break coming up. But everybody has to study so much for exams that it doesn't really feel like a break. And even aside from exams, they have to start studying up for Buckbeak's appeal. Which earlier I think I said he lost his appeal, but that was not this. This is the first one. And also Harry is practicing Quidditch all the goddamn time. Yeah. And Wood is getting insufferable about it.
This break does not have any of the fun and joy and leisure of that Christmas break.
Exactly.
Which is, in my experience, kind of how that spring break works.
Yes.
Unless, of course, you're one of those people who actually goes to, air quotes, spring break, in like Florida or Mexico or wherever. But that break is never as, like, good as your Christmas winter break.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird time of year, I think. Like, if you can travel, it's fine, but it's always sort of in the Northeast, like, an odd moment because it's still cold most of the time, but things are melting, but it's like miserable. So you're just kind of stuck, like pretending that you can do all this fun stuff and then getting your plans canceled on you because it unexpectedly snows suddenly.
Pretty much.
And yeah, I just feel like the whole like spring break just always felt vaguely depressing to me, There was always like for winter break, everyone comes home. But like I would notice for spring break, a lot of people would just stay wherever, wherever their school was because it's close enough to your winter break that just passed that people are usually broke still, from the holidays because, it's like from January to March. It's really not that much time. Right. So
people are broke. They can't get home. And term is going to end in a couple of months, like a couple of weeks after spring break, then it'll be June and school's over. So it's just this weird thing where a lot of people don't come home. The weather's all fucked up.
The weather's really fucked up.
Yeah.
That's something I feel like if you don't live in the Northeast, it's hard to get across. Maybe this is true of other parts of the country, but once you reach a certain point in the year, you inevitably think spring is here, and then you inevitably get one last snowstorm that fucks everything up.
Yep.
It always happens, and we always are surprised.
Yep.
Even though it happens every goddamn fucking year. So
I
feel like
a snowstorm in March.
Yeah.
This never happens except for the time it happened every year.
Exactly. So I feel like that's just sort of a thing, is just knowing that's like hanging over your head, and it's bound to happen on your break too. So that anything fun you had been gonna do is just screwed now. So anyway, they're practicing a ton, and everything is like high tension at this point with the match coming. It says, never in anyone's memory had a match approached in such a highly charged atmosphere. By the time the holidays were over, tension between the two teams and their houses was at a breaking point. A number of small scuffles broke out in the corridors, culminating in a nasty incident in which a Gryffindor 4th year and a Slytherin 6th year ended up in the hospital wing with leaks sprouting out of their ears.
Oh.
Right? Harry was having a particularly bad time of it. He couldn't walk to class without Slytherins sticking out their legs and trying to trip him up. Crabbe and Goyle kept popping up wherever he went and slouching away, looking disappointed when they saw him surrounded by people. Wood had given instructions that Harry should be accompanied everywhere in case the Slytherins tried to put him out of action. The whole of Gryffindor House took up the challenge enthusiastically, so that it was impossible for Harry to get to classes on time because he was surrounded by a vast chattering crowd. And Harry, meanwhile, is paranoid somebody's going to fuck with his broom, and he keeps going and like running back to Gryffindor Tower to check on it. So finally, it's the day of the match, and he's having a really bad dream. And this is a really fun illustration of the Grimm that continues on for 3 sets of pages. I really liked how this is done.
Yeah, this is pretty cool.
You guys should really get the illustrated edition, and you should really use my link to do it, unspoiledpodcast.com/Amazon. But it's really fun because the forelegs and head are on these 2 pages. You turn the page, and then like the whole back end of the torso and back legs are on the next page, and then the 3rd page is just his tail, like curling up and around. So Harry's having a nightmare. He wakes up in the middle of the night, and he gets up to get a glass of water, and then he notices something outside, and he sees Crookshanks and the Grimm, which kind of like puts a weird spin on it, because he thought that the Grimm was only something he would be able to see, but here's Crookshanks just like chilling with it. And he's just like, wait, hold on. That's not how this is supposed to go. I don't think Crookshanks is part of the death omens. And he tries to wake Ron up to see if he can see the Grimm, but it is gone by the time Ron actually wakes up, of course. Did I tell you about the other night? I was so scared. It was like 4 a.m. It was so late. It was dark. We were asleep. And Owen had some kind of nightmare. And I am dead asleep and just get woken up by Owen screaming in my ear, "What are you doing? What the fuck? What the fuck?"
Oh my God.
Right? And I jumped and I'm like, what the? And he's like, "There's somebody." And it was like he was still asleep when he said all this. And all of a sudden he like woke up and he was like, "Oh my God. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know what. I thought there was something. It's nothing." And I was like, what did you think? And I have a hook on the wall by the bed where I hang my bathrobe. And he woke up and from this like weird dream that he had been having, saw it hanging there and thought it was a person standing there.
Oh.
And thought they were holding a camcorder and recording us sleeping.
Oh my God.
Which is the creepiest fucking thing. And like, I didn't even fully realize, because I was fucking half asleep, that he thought he saw it from the bathrobe hanging there. So I thought he had seen someone outside our window and then realized it was nothing. So of course I'm like, how do you know it was nothing? You didn't go check. Because I was misunderstanding what he thought he'd seen. And so he was like, "Oh, it's nothing. I'm so sorry. Let's just go back to bed." And now I'm all keyed up going, well, how do you know? And finally, I just was like, well, I guess if somebody's recording us sleeping, there's nothing to see. So, okay. And I just like let myself fall back asleep, but it scared the balls off me, which is why I no longer have balls. And this just reminds me of that, like trying to get somebody to wake up and be like, "Do you see this thing?" Except that it really wasn't there. There's nothing there. Owen, what are you doing?
I like that Ron falls immediately back to sleep too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's like, "Wait, but it was right here." Don't care. Bye. So then comes the Quidditch match, which is the dirtiest game that Harry has ever played in. I will not do a play-by-play here because there's no need. But basically, everybody is trying to knock everyone else off their broom. They're hitting each other with bats instead of trying to use bludgers. They're literally Malfoy grabs the tail of Harry's broom.
Lee Jordan is spectacular through this, though. I will say
so great.
Yeah, but this game is pretty fucking dirty, and it's shocking to me that it doesn't get stopped.
Right. Yeah, and at one point, like, McGonagall keeps on telling Lee to fucking rein it in because he's going too far. But then when Malfoy grabs Harry's broom, Lee goes off screaming, "You cheating scum!" And Professor McGonagall does not try to stop him. she's standing up, shaking her fist at Malfoy, and her hat has fallen off. Like she's lost it. And Harry has to do a couple of different feints to like get Malfoy to leave him the fuck alone. And then finally, he spots the snitch, but Malfoy's way closer, and Malfoy has already spotted it. And now it really does come down to who's got the fastest broom, which doesn't feel like a fair thing to base the sport on. But I guess that's how it is in like the Olympics when you're like doing speed skating, or if you're, it's all about what kind of equipment you've got, or if you're doing like the luge. Such a silly word. The luge. Stop it. Who decided that? It sounds like it's not even a finished word. Like you're supposed to have another syllable on the end, but then you just let it sit there, like unfinished and naked.
And everybody's like, "No, it's fine. We were going to do more, but
Yeah, I feel like it should be like the lugerie, like something really Frenchy. But I think part of it too is that it reminds me too much of the word loogie.
Yes.
And so it's like almost like somebody started to say loogie and then they were like, "I don't want to say that word." And they cut it off.
Is what should happen anytime anyone starts to say that word. They should decide not to immediately.
Loogie. Guys, RoShawn has no problem with me swearing, but God forbid I use the other F word. I'm not saying it because RoShawn gets really mad at me. And I'm not talking about the homophobic slur. I'm talking about the expellation of air from one's anus. RoShawn can't handle that word, and she gets real mad.
I don't even like the description of that process. Like
expellation of air?
I don't want to talk about it. Why do we have to talk about it? I don't think we should talk about that. We shouldn't talk about
evidently.
Anything that your body does to expel anything. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear anything about it.
Oh, God. Well, I don't really feel like you're asking too much there, so that's fine. I don't want to hear about your body expelling things, okay?
I don't want to hear about, like,
But RoShawn, there's so much I wanted to tell you.
Like, you texted me that I sent you that, like, sleeping emoji. And you're like, it looks like it has I hate that word.
Snot bubble?
Yes. I don't like that either. I don't like anything along those lines. I don't. It just is so upsetting to me.
Okay, so now that I've given all of our listenership ammunition by which to really fuck with you, I think we can move on to the ending of this, where Harry beats Malfoy to the snitch, grabs it, and everybody loses their goddamn minds, and floods the field and holds him up, and he says, "If only there had been a Dementor around." As a sobbing wood passed Harry the cup, as he lifted it into the air, Harry felt he could have produced the world's best Patronus.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Aww.
It's pretty good. McGonagall is crying. It's her best day. It's good. It's all right.
It's good, and then downgraded immediately to "it's all right." In true RoShawn fashion. I have to ready myself for this when we're on vacation. For me to be like, "Isn't this awesome?" And for you to be like, "It is." I mean, it's fine.
I can't ever say anything is good. It's a curse. I'm sorry. I'll say something is great, and they'll be like, it's all right. This is fine. This is the best day I've ever had, considering how terrible my life has been. That's
almost like there's moments where it's like, I think you're afraid to just acknowledge something being good because you don't believe it can stay good, so you don't want to be held to that.
Nothing can be good. Because
I think that's right.
The minute it's good, something will come along and snatch it away.
Yeah, I think so. You're almost like, I'm not going to draw the evil eye to this thing that I love.
Yep. Yep. If
So if I say
express
it's
how
good, I'm
much
like, oh,
I
shit.
like a thing, then that thing gets to stay. All right, baby.
Oh, I was like, what? But yeah, that, like, I kind of get what you mean. It's almost like the knock on wood thing where you're like, I can't say things have been going really well. You can't just say that and leave that out there. So you have to kind of quantify it or take it back immediately. But yeah, so I will prepare myself for that, but I swear to God, there are going to have to be a couple moments where you just let it be great.
Yeah, I will.
Just let me be great.
I will. If you don't make me have to say anything out loud, then I'll enjoy it just fine.
That's the spirit. Don't force me to commit to anything. God. I do get that, though. It makes some kind of absurd sense. All right, so that's the end of that chapter. I wanted really quick to bring up an email that we got from a listener who had a suggestion, because we had been talking about Sirius being able to maintain his sanity while he's in Azkaban, and how the thing that I had presented was that he says he was able to cling to the idea that he was innocent, which was not a happy thought, so the Dementors couldn't take it away.
Right.
But Julie Bouchard, who is a patron,
she is.
She emailed me and said that the thought of his innocence was important, but many inmates would have that same situation. What set Sirius apart was his ability to transform into a dog. He said that he'd transform into the dog for just a break, and that the Dementors discounted his simplified thoughts in dog form. So not only did his dog form physically facilitate his escape, it allowed him to have the sanity to A, want to escape, and B, make a plan.
How about that? I never even thought of that.
I believe he says that actually maybe later in this book or later on even, where he says, like, when I'm transformed into a dog, my thoughts were simpler and the Dementors couldn't feed on them the same way. But I had forgotten all about that. So thank you very much, Julie, for writing in with that and reminding me, because I totally forgot. So yeah, and we have had 2 donations. I think one of these I mentioned already. Daniela Oropesa donated on our GoFundMe, and Sarah Nink donated as well. And we just posted the final movie episode for the rewards for donors to the GoFundMe. So, and it was a really great way to end our coverage of the movies, because we actually liked the last 2.
Yes,
they weren't perfect, but they're definitely the best ones. So it was kind of great. Instead of starting off strong and then having it end in a whimper where we're like, why did we do this to ourselves? We ended it with more like, oh, hey, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
All right. So I feel like that was probably our most positive episode that we've recorded. So yeah, if you're interested in listening to those, you should donate to our GoFundMe, and then I will send you the link to the Dropbox that has all 3 episodes in it. We covered the first 3 movies, the 4th, 5th, and 6th movies in the 2nd episode, and then the last 2 Deathly Hallows movies in the final episode. So just go to GoFundMe.com/UnspoiledHPWorld, and we are at $3,640.
Woohoo!
We
That's
are
amazing.
Really close to our $4,000 goal. We only have 10 days at this point to reach that goal before we go on our trip. So help us out, guys. Get us there, because time is running out. And it would be super awesome if you could get us to that final last goal. I think we can get there. I think this is a totally doable goal. But I just need y'all to come through on that. And so I'm trying to bribe you with extra episodes, because that's what I do. And I think they're good ones. And also, I want to say hi to new patrons. So, let me pull that up. And I also, again, want to remind everybody that the Akio box for December is going to be shipped. I think it goes out like the first week of September is when they finally ship them. And if you use code UNSPOILED, you get 10% off your first 3 boxes. And there was a post, and I'm not going to spoil this in case people want no spoilers, But there was a post in the patrons group with a preview of one item that's going to be included in the December box that is a wearable item and is kind of rad. And I'll just say, if you are a Quidditch fan, you may enjoy it. And you can see that spoiler on their Facebook page or on their Instagram at AkioBox on Instagram, and they're just Akio on Facebook, I think. But yeah, it's I'm kind of considering, like, it's tough with the trip coming up right around holiday times, where I'm like, not only do I have to save money for the trip, but I also have to save some money for buying presents for other people. But I kind of want to get that box.
Right.
We'll see.
Excuse me.
So, and we have 2 new reviews as well. 2 new 5-star reviews. One from Becky Moo. I found this podcast mentioned on Reddit almost 5 weeks ago and binge listened and have just got to Snape's memories at the end of Deathly Hallows. I love how you guys say all the stuff that I thought when I first read it. Going through it all again with you is just wonderful. The relationship you have together is just the best. Agreed. And I'm so glad I still have so many hours of this amazing podcast. Yay, thanks, Becky.
Oh, thank you so much.
And then Kaylee, 5 stars, makes my heart happy.
Oh, that's sweet too.
I'm a runner and recently just become so bored with music while I'm out training. Someone told me to try podcasts, which are completely new to me. I asked which one, and they said search for something you love. Harry Potter. Thank you, girls.
Oh.
My sister and I have a half marathon in 3 months at Disney.
Ooh.
And the only thing getting me out the door in this cold Ohio weather is knowing I get to listen to this podcast. I only let myself listen when I run, which means I'm running a lot more. Oh, that's a good idea, and I would not have the discipline for that. It's been 11 years since I first read these, so it's been wonderful hearing to get somebody else's thoughts, theories, joys, and shocks. I can't even remember how I had felt all those years ago, so I love reliving those emotions through RoShawn. I constantly laugh out loud, and everyone else on the trails probably thinks I'm nuts. Just started book 5. This podcast is truly magical. Aww.
That's
Thanks,
really
guys.
nice.
So that's us at 315 reviews.
Woohoo!
Sweet. So new patrons, we just have a couple. This last week, Avery Chakravarti. Oh, actually, Avery's been a patron. What am I talking about? Never mind. Hi, Avery. Amy Dunlap, Robert Smith, Lise Jenserud, and Fernando Fortune, which is fucking a great name.
It really is.
Like, are you a magician, Fernando? Please become a magician with that name. But yeah, welcome to all of you guys. And if you are not already, make sure to become a member of the Facebook group for patrons, because I do a lot of mingling and asking questions about what people want and, floating ideas in there. And also there's just a lot of other patrons posting funny stuff that has to do with what we're covering. And I think that's about everything. I think I covered it all. Whee! Is there anything you'd like to add, madam?
No, ma'am.
All right. Woo.
Sorry about that.
Mic.
That was my mic.
So yeah, just want to reiterate, thank you all so much who donated to the GoFundMe. I'm so excited. We both need this break really badly. And it just couldn't be happening without y'all. We'd be so screwed. We'd have the plane tickets and we would not have any way to pay for anything. Mm-hmm. It's like we both had setbacks that were unexpected, as is our want. And wound up not being able to save the money for the trip that we expected to be able to save. And so it would have been really, really difficult. And it would have probably been, it's like you can go on a fun trip and people can say, well, just enjoy where you are. But it's difficult to have a good time when you're constantly worrying if you're going to have enough money to feed yourself until the end of it. It stresses you out. And so, or you're just racking up tons of credit card bills because you're like, well, I guess this is what I'm doing.
Right.
So,
and some of us don't have credit cards.
Or there's that. Yes. Owen got an emergency one, but that's really backup in case something goes terribly, terribly wrong. So let's hope that doesn't have to be touched. But thank you all. Just seriously. You don't know how much this means to us and how incredible it is and how much we need it. We just need it so much. So, so there's going to be one more episode that I will post before our trip. and then we will be gone for probably 2 weeks, because we're going to be gone until Friday, and then the next week we might record or we might still want to break, but I will keep y'all posted about that. All right, cool. Yay. Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure to leave a review if you haven't already. And find us on Facebook at facebook.com/unspoiledpod, Twitter at unspoiledshow, Instagram at unspoiledpodcast, and on our website at unspoiledpodcast.com. And don't forget, since the holidays are coming, and there is going to be a bunch of sales on Amazon, and they have Black Friday, and then they have Cyber Monday, use my link for the love of all that is holy and good. Please save my link, bookmark it, and use it for all of your shopping. And it will help me out so much. It's unspoiledpodcast.com/Amazon, or you can click through to any of the items that are listed on the website, or I'll also be posting stuff that are fun gift ideas on the Facebook page, and shop via those links that I share, and that will also count towards my link. And it doesn't cost you extra to shop that way. I just get credit from Amazon for bringing you to the website. So yeah, everyone, please do that. It would be enormously helpful. It doesn't cost you anything, and it's just adds up so much around the holidays, especially. So let's do it. All right. You ready, lady? Sign off?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, everyone. We love you, and we will see you next week with a new episode. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye, guys.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.